If you, like me, are a fan of the RTS genre, you may have noticed that in the past few years, well, the pickings have been kind of slim as far as new games goes. So, what exactly happened? What happened to the RTS genre? Where did it go? Today I'm going to explore this topic and discuss what's happened to it. But first, we gotta go back and just do a little bit of a history lesson. Now, through the late 80s and early 90s, there were a lot of games that incorporated real-time strategy and real-time tactics type of gameplay into them, and several different developers kind of created some of the staples that we see now in these games. But the first game that really truly put it all together and was what we see as like the first modern style RTS is Dune 2, which came out in 1992. It laid the foundation for a lot of greats that came later, such as Warcraft, such as Command and Conquer, etc., etc. So, really, that was kind of the starting point, was 92, when things really took off, right? And over the next few years, a lot of different devs came out with some really great games. And then, I'd say, probably from about the late 90s through the mid-2000s, we saw a huge boom in RTSs. This is what I consider to be the golden age of RTSs, because you saw tons of great games. All sorts of games came out, right? StarCraft 2, Warcraft 3, Command & Conquer Generals. You know, you had all sorts of editions. You had Age of Empires 3 come out, Command & Conquer 3, and many more that I'm not even mentioning. These are just some of the ones I've played, you know, that are all from that time period, and they're all great games, right? But then, after that point, after about 2007 or 2008, things kind of taper off a little bit, and starting with this decade, there really hasn't been much. If you look at it, really the only true, like, big deal RTS that's come out has been StarCraft 2. And that game came out in, 2010, right? And I mean, that's not to say that there haven't been other RTSs that have come out since then, but see, like, and that's the thing, like, some people might say, oh, well, you know, what are you talking about? Plenty of RTSs have come out within the past few years. That'd be great. You know, what about, say, the Total War games that have been coming out? What about Donna War 3? And the thing is, I mean, that's all fine and dandy, but number one, Donna War 3 didn't do that well. Not saying it's a terrible game. I haven't played it myself, but just looking at what people have said online, it's definitely not a winner, really. And as far as Total War goes, Total War, those are great games, but they're not, I mean, okay, they are RTSs if you go by the textbook definition, but they're a little bit different. They're not really, I'd say, a traditional RTS. They're a little bit out of the box compared to a normal one. And I'm not saying that makes them bad. They're not bad at all. They're great games, but they're not exactly the same as a straight up full-blood traditional RTS. As far as all the other RTSs that have come out within the past few years, the thing is, most of them are indie games made by indie devs, and that's not a bad thing. Like, you gotta understand, I'm not hating on these games. I'm not saying they're bad games, because they're indie games. All I'm saying is that a AAA developer is going to have a lot more reach and a lot more kind of influence in a genre than an indie dev is. Doesn't mean the game's worse, it just means the game's perhaps not quite as influential and doesn't reach as many people in the genre, and that's kind of what we're seeing, right? A lot of these smaller games, they may be great games, but guess what? They don't have a backer like EA or like Blizzard behind them. They just don't. Doesn't mean they're bad, they just don't have that kind of backing to them. Like I said, we just haven't seen many games come out this past decade. I'll show you exactly what I mean and discuss what happened by going through some of the major publishers to see what's happened. So, first of all, I'm going to take a look at Blizzard, or Activision Blizzard as it's now called since they merged. You know, they had a great time. They made StarCraft, of course. They made Warcraft 3, very popular games. But then, they didn't make a Warcraft 4. They made World of Warcraft. And World of Warcraft is a whole beast in and of itself, super mega popular game, and basically, because of that, they're definitely, you know, they're not making a Warcraft 4. I'm not saying they're never going to make it, but As long as WoW's around, I don't think there's going to be a Warcraft 4. There'd be no point to it. So, and Warcraft was a huge thing. It'd been there since the early days, really. They're kind of down for the count on that. As far as StarCraft goes, like I said earlier, StarCraft 2 came out in 2010? And their most recent expansion is from 2015. So that's 3 years on the latest expansion, 8 years on the game in general. And once again, I'm not saying there's never going to be a StarCraft 3, but it's going to be a while. I wouldn't hold your breath. In fact, I think there is going to be one, because if you look at it, there's 12 years between StarCraft and StarCraft 2? That's quite a long time. So, it could be, who knows? Hell, we might not get StarCraft 3 till 2022 if they keep on the same kind of development cycle. I wouldn't say that Blizzard's necessarily out of the RTS genre, but I'd say they're sleeping on it right now. They used to be a titan in the genre, and now they're kind of sleeping on it. Because I'm sure they'll make another RTS at some point, but just right now, it's not happening. Let's look at another publisher, EA. EA has published, of course, the Command & Conquer series, a huge deal. It's another huge staple in the genre. Well, what have they done in the past few years with it? Back in, 2007, 2008, they were doing pretty good. They had Red Alert 3, they had Command & Conquer 3, and the expansion for it. Those games were doing pretty good. They were fun games. Perhaps not quite as good as the games from their heyday, but they were still pretty good. And then... Command & Conquer 4, it just... Okay, look, all I'm going to say is EA tried to do some stuff with it, and they tried to be a little outside the box, and it just didn't really work, and the game was a huge flop. It was trash, alright? It was critically panned everywhere. It was given terrible reviews. So I think EA just kind of was like, let's put this on the back burner, right? For years, there was basically just radio silence on Command & Conquer. We didn't know what was going on. We thought there was going to be another game, but they canceled it. And everybody was like, well, great. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, there was going to be a new Command & Conquer, right? EA said they were gonna have a little announcement. Everybody got hyped instantly, like, oh boy, it's been several years. It's been like a decade since a good Command & Conquer game came out, right? So let's see what it is. And, it's a mobile game. Yep, it's a game on your phone, not even an RTS, got microtransactions and stuff. And, people were pissed. Rightfully so. I was pissed. So, long story short, EA kind of came back and said, well, hey, you know what, we're going to release Command & Conquer in HD, so we're, like, remastering it and stuff, so here you go, sorry, not sorry, I guess. And now, and I feel kind of the same way as I do about Warcraft 3 Reforged, which is their HD thing that Blizzard is doing, in that, okay, it's great that you're remastering these old games, that's nice, but it's still an old game, right? It's still not new content, it's still not a new RTS. Is there going to be a Command & Conquer 5? I hope so. I hope it's not trash, right? Like, I hope they go back and make a good one. EA knows at this point that there's interest for one. They know there's a market for it because of how many people were getting hyped when they said there was going to be a new one. So hopefully they'll make a Command & Conquer 5, but once again, they're kind of sleeping on it right now. Another game series that EA published that certainly isn't quite the titan that Command & Conquer was, but in my opinion, it was one of my favorites. Lord of the Rings, Battle for Middle-earth, and Battle for Middle-earth 2 were awesome games. Some of my favorite RTSs. They were great. They were well-received, well-loved games. They still have a decent community to them to this day. Another great series, in my opinion, came out in the mid-2000s. What happened to that? EA lost their licensing deal with New Line Cinema, or whoever the hell it is. I think it's New Line Cinema that owns the Lord of the Rings rights. They lost that deal. Yeah, they can't make another one. Can't make another Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth, so that's dead. Right there, those are two huge companies, right? Blizzard and EA, who were both putting out very influential, very good staples of the RTS genre, and they're basically just sleeping on it right now. So that's a big part of why some people may see the genre as kind of dead. Another one, Microsoft, right? Age of Empires. Another great series. Age of Empires 3 came out in 2005. Age of Empires 4 got announced a year and a half ago, and we still have nothing. We don't know if the game's going to come out, when it's going to come out, no details. I mean, their little teaser trailer was basically just concept art from old Age of Empires games, so there's no gameplay, so we don't know if they're even developing it, to be honest. Will it come out eventually? Hopefully, probably, but once again, I don't really know. You know, these are just a few publishers and developers. There are more out there that kind of have a similar situation going on. So, you know, at the end of the day, yes, I mean, there's still games coming out. There's still the Total War series that's kicking, right? And then there is a healthy indie community, indie devs making RTSs that are good games. And some of even these older games, even these decade plus old games, have good communities to them. You know, people are still making Warcraft 3 maps and whatnot, and people still play BFME 2. I do. You know, so the community, I'd say, is fairly healthy. There are developers making these games, but the big devs, the big dogs in the game, kind of the titans of the industry, right, are kind of sleeping on it right now. And it's definitely hurting it to some extent or another. Because at the end of the day, once again, these indie games may be great, but they don't have the same kind of reach and influence as the AAA publishers have. So it makes the genre look like it's not doing very well. You know, I hope it changes at some point, right? I hope that we get a Command & Conquer 5 that's not trash. I hope we get a StarCraft 3 within the next couple of years, you know? Hope Age of Empires 4 happens. All these things, you know? And who knows, that might revitalize the community a little bit. But as of right now, I mean, I wouldn't be dramatic, right? I wouldn't go ahead and say, oh, it's dead, because it's not really a dead genre, but it's definitely in a downturn. What do you guys think? Is the genre dead? Is it still kicking? Is it ever gonna come back to its glory days? Let me know in the comments.